Chris Gavreau. What organization are you representing today?
I'm here with 350 Connecticut. We're a group trying to build a mass movement against just climate inaction, for climate justice. We think we need a movement of millions of working people in the streets if we're actually going to stop the oil companies and the politicians that they pay.
But some of the climate activists say they've won, and this bill that Manchin and Biden have put together is going to cut back what we need. What do you feel about that?
Honestly, I've read very detailed explanations of the bill from Food and Water Watch, Water and Food Action, a number of important research organizations, and honestly, I think the bill is a real mess. It mandates, it requires fossil fuel expansion. It requires the deregulation, easing of the regulations for pipelines and power plants. I mean, can you imagine? The whole world is burning, roads are peeling up, you can't, bridges are collapsing because of the heat in Europe and so forth, and their solution is more fossil fuels. So it's really misnamed. They talk about it as a climate bill because it has a certain amount of funding for climate technology. But what are they actually funding? What are the, quote, green measures that they're actually funding? One of them is carbon sequestration. And who is promising to sequester carbon? The big oil companies. They say we can keep drilling oil and then we can sequester the carbon produced from the emissions produced. They've never done it. It's never been operated to scale, but the government is just giving them millions and millions and millions of dollars to try. The same people who have brought us to the near apocalypse.
And they're going to approve a controversial pipeline across West Virginia, across 1,000 rivers or something like that?
Yep, and it gives the go-ahead for that. It makes it much more difficult to stop the pipelines and so forth. On the other hand, what we're demanding is that Biden declare a climate emergency. Under a climate emergency, Biden could immediately stop all exports of fossil fuels. He could immediately halt any new fossil fuel extraction. He could take measures that require the production of all of the hardware necessary for clean, renewable fossil fuels. He could take over U.S. factories like they did to wage World War II and turn those factories to producing exactly what we need to save ourselves from climate warming.
So it sounds like a climate emergency is more than just words. It would really give them a lot of power.
It would, though I have to say, getting him to declare an emergency would just be the first step, because we know what to expect from Biden. Without massive pressure in the streets, he collapses every time. He hasn't managed to do anything for working people since he's been elected, but we can push him, we can make it impossible for him not to take action if we really put thousands and thousands and millions in the streets repeatedly without interruption.
And we're here to demand that Joe Biden declare a climate emergency. It's definitely going to happen that we meet the 1.5 degrees Celsius change by 2030, which means widespread famine and drought. The current bill put forward by Joe Biden and House Democrats with edits made by by Manchin is way underestimating what needs to be done in order to avoid climate catastrophe.
Philip, why'd you come today with these various signs about climate?
To get into people's heads that climate is a problem and that we should do something now. Because if we don't do something now, everything else we're doing will not matter.
What do you think of the Manchin-Biden bill that is being talked about this week?
Well, I'm trying to get word from the more independent experts as to whether it's worth the downsides of primarily the permitting of the pipelines. Apparently, the fact is some more leases isn't a big deal, and all the rest of it seems to be good, and we should back that. If they maybe they'll find that the permitting the pipelines more easily violates the Constitution.
So why'd you come out today all the way from Amherst?
I came out to support the fight for a livable planet, because my generation, if we don't fight to fix it now, are in a pretty bad place.
Alec, tell us about this project you're doing in Massachusetts.
Well, I'm working with MassPERG, and our big campaign right now is pushing the Massachusetts state legislature to commit the state to 100% renewable energy, and I'm really excited to be working on that, and I will be heading and leading the campaign the coming semester, which I'm really excited for.
And where is the state now? Are they committed to anything?
Yeah, there are a couple of decent climate bills that have been passed, but this one, if passed, would be the strongest clean energy law in America, so that's why we're really fighting hard for it.
And what groups or what people are behind this effort?
It's entirely students. It's these are active across campuses across Massachusetts. It's entirely student-run, student-led, and there is help a little bit from outside, but it is almost entirely student-led, and that's what I think really makes it so wonderful, because it is the students who will be affected by climate change.
Why'd you come out today?
Well, I saw something on Facebook and I said, sure, I'll be one of the anonymous people that shows up and shows support. But then when I broke my arm, I said I can't come unless somebody gives me a ride. So somebody did, so I'm here, and I'm hoping they'll also take me home.
I hope
Otherwise,
so.
it's a 2.5-hour walk.
Oh boy. What do people talk about in Glastonbury about climate? Does it come up much, would you say?
I'm fairly isolated at home, but in a lot of webinars and stuff that I've been attending, I'm taking a class with the Pache Bene about nonviolence toward the earth. And there's a lot of interest. I'm involved in the pollinator pathway in the town. So people are very concerned about it. I work with young people. They're concerned about it. I've got a couple of them, at the end of the day, we're putting our food scraps in a bucket, we're ripping up the plates we used, putting those in the bucket, and then I'll bring it all home and compost it in my backyard, which I have those terrible Japanese jumping earthworms, and they compost really quickly, but they're terrible for the dirt.
I see. Tell us more about pollinator pathways. That's something a number of us are involved with.
Okay. The pollinator pathway is really, the more we hear about the endangered species, and, the monarch is now on the endangered, almost extinct list. And the only way that they can do their thing is to get milkweed. So I have a ton of milkweed in my yard. I've been trying to get involved in the native species, so once they do hatch themselves, they have something to eat. And so the premise of the pollinator pathway is that they need food every, couple of feet. Just like if you were driving down the New Jersey Turnpike, there's rest stops along the way to get you what you need. And so if we can get a lot of people to start planting native things in their yard, then the pollinators, so it's not just butterflies, but bees and bats, and even some pests, they do things to help your garden. I haven't figured out which ones do what yet, but so I think it's really important that we're creating food banks for the pollinators, who without them, we would not have fruits and vegetables on our plate.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.